The world breathes. This is the first lesson a child of the Sky Clan learns. It is not a lesson taught with words, but with the soles of their feet. The ground beneath their village of Haydn Sinu is a landscape of living leather, scarred and mapped by time, rising and falling with each colossal respiration. For generations, these ancient humans have lived in this perfect symbiosis. A thriving settlement lashed to the broad, mountainous back of the Great One, the Argentinosaurus they call the moving mountain. Their lives are governed not by the sun, but by the slow, continent-spanning migration of their host. They harvest the tough, parasitic cycads that grow between the creature's dorsal osteoderms and collect water from the pools that form in the valleys of its hide after a storm. Their safety is its scale. Their world is its life. But today, the breath is wrong. It comes not as a gentle, oceanic swell, but as a series of violent, gut-deep tremors. Kale, the clan's hunt master, grips the thick, woven vine railing of the main watchpost, his knuckles white. Below, the children who were learning to balance on the ever-shifting terrain now cling to the safety tethers, their small faces filled with confusion. The entire village shudders. The sound of stretching leather and groaning with a terrible chorus against the low, pained rumble that vibrates up from the very bones of their world. He looks out from his perch on the high shoulder ridge, scanning the vast plains of the prehistoric life unfolding far below. Then he sees them, 3 of them. Giganotosaurus, moving with the fluid, terrifying purpose of a wolf pack. They are not snapping at the heels like opportunistic scavengers. This is a planned assault. They move with a horrifying intelligence, flanking the Great One. Their immense, blade-like teeth glinting in the afternoon sun. They ignore the pillar-like legs, the tail that could shatter them with a single blow. They have a target. One of the pack finds toward the head, drawing the Great One's long, slow attention, while the other to strike at the same moment, their massive jaws clamping down high on the creature's flank. In the soft, vulnerable muscle behind the armored limb, they rip and tear in unison, pulling away with synchronized violence, leaving behind a wound that is not a cut, but a chasm. Dark blood, thick as tar, begins to well and spill, a waterfall of life painting the ground a sickening crimson. The Great One bellows, a sound of such profound agony that it shakes the very air, a sound that promises an end to everything. The clan can only watch, helpless specks on a dying god. As their world is ripped open, the predators, satisfied with their work, lope away, their more stained. They do not need to kill it today. They know, as Kale now knows with cold certainty, that the wound itself will do the work for them. The siege has begun. Days bleed into a week of slow-motion agony. The Great One's movements become sluggish, its mighty, earth-shaking footsteps replaced by a pain, dragging gait. The Giganotosaurus back. Those masters of brutal patience never strays far. They shadow their dying prize, a constant, menacing presence on the horizon of this prehistoric world. They are not yet attacking, merely waiting. Their occasional roars a promise of the feast to come. A miasma of decay begins to rise from the chasm in the Great One's flank, a foul scent that clings to the village and taints every breath. The clan's healers, led by the elder Mara, work ceaselessly. They lower themselves on vine ropes to the edge of the wound, packing it with thick poultices of mashed cycad leaves and resinous sap. But it is like trying to heal a mountain with handfuls of dirt. The infection festers deep within the muscle, a poison spreading through their world. At the nightly gathering around the central fire pit, a carefully tended flame in a basin of stone and packed earth, the truth becomes unavoidable. Mara, her face etched with exhaustion, addresses the clan. The poultices slay the rot, but the flesh does not mend. Its spirit weakens because it knows the hunter's weight. It has no time to heal. Her words hang in the air, heavy as unshed rain. Every adult understands. Their host, the very foundation of their existence as Homo sapiens, is giving up. It is Kale who gives voice to the terrible, Unspoken solution. He stands, his silhouette stark against the flames, the obsidian head of his spear catching the light. We cannot fight the poison from up here. We must fight the cause down there. A wave of murmurs ripples through the assembled clan. To go down, to willingly descend into the killing fields, the domain of monsters. It is a violation of their most fundamental survival instinct. They are people of the sky, not the earth. The hunters will not let it rest. Kale continues, his voice low and steady, cutting through the fear. They will harry it, nip at its heels, drive it to exhaustion until it falls. We must draw them away. Give the Great One time. This is the crux of their advanced survival skills. Not just reaction, but foresight. A plan born of desperation. This is the hard choice. A sacrifice, not of one, but of a chosen few. For the survival of the many, he asks for no volunteers. He simply meets the eyes of the other hunters. Bioa, the veteran whose face is a map of old scars, gives a slow, single nod. Then Lyra, young but with the sharpest eyes in the clan, steps forward, the others follow. There is no ceremony, only a grim acceptance. Their primitive technology is prepared. Ropes of braided sinew, thicker than any they have used before, and spears tipped with shards of obsidian, traded for seasons ago from the ground tribes they sometimes passed. The descent begins at dawn. As the first light spills across the plains, the 6 hunters, laden with water skins and their meager weapons, begin their terrifying journey. They are small figures rappelling down an immense, breathing cliff of flesh and scale. The wind whips around them. The sheer scale of the droplet is a nightmare. Every shuddering breath the Great One takes threatens to send them smashing against its hide. Far below, the world of the Giganotosaurus awaits. Their feet finally touch the soft, damp soil, a substance most have not felt since childhood. They unclip their tethers, severing their connection to home. They are now 6 of the most vulnerable creatures in this ancient, savage land, armed with little more than a plan that borders on madness. On the ground, the air is thick with the smell of damp earth and dread. Ken and his hunters move through the undergrowth of giant ferns, feeling like ghosts in their own world. Above them, the Great One's flank is a sky-filling cliff of scarred hide, each footstep a distant, rolling thunder. This is what life million years ago demanded. For some, small things to think like monsters. Their plan is simple and suicidal. They find their bait in a small clearing, a young triceratops, limping from an old injury, separated from its herd. A profound sadness passes between the hunters, an acknowledgement of the harsh calculus of this prehistoric world. They are about to sacrifice one life to save their own. With coordinated shouts and thrown stones, they drive the panicked creature out into the open plains, directly toward the patient silhouettes of the Giganotosaurus back. The effect is immediate. The predators, sensing easy prey, abandon their siege. They converge on the terrified herbivore in a blur of reptilian speed. The hunters can only watch from the edge of the tree line as the brutal, efficient kill unfolds. But their task is not over. As the pack feasts, tearing great chunks of flesh from the carcass, Kale gives the signal. This is their moment of greatest risk. They must now make themselves a more tempting, or at least a more irritating, target. They emerge from the trees, screaming, waving their spears, making themselves as large and loud as they can. It is an act of pure, calculated audacity. One of the carnivores, annoyed at the disruption, lifts its blood-soaked head and bellows a challenge. It takes a step toward them, and another. This is the delicate, terrifying dance. Pull the thread, but do not let it catch you. Bioa, the old veteran, hurls his spear, a pinprick against the beast's thick leg, drawing its full, furious attention. It is a fatal act of altruism. The Giganotosaurus lunges, not with the intent to eat, but to crush the annoyance. Bioa is gone in an instant. A life erased to buy a few more precious seconds for the others to scatter back into the forest. High above, on the moving mountain, the clan works with a frantic, unified energy. They see the diversion, the distant chaos, and they know the price being paid. Every hand is at work. While Mara directs the healers in applying the last of the sap poultices to the now undisturbed wound, the others enact the clan's desperate, forward-thinking plan. They lush massive, sharpened timbers, petrified logs dragged from the forests of the Great Ones back over generations, to the thickest osteoderms along its flanks. They angle them downwards, creating a bristling, permanent defense, a palisade of giant spears designed to impale any predator that attempts another such attack. They weave nets of vine between the high vertebrae of the spine, creating new pathways for patrols. This is the turning point in their human evolution, the moment they cease to be mere passengers. When Kale and the 4 surviving hunters make the Gruen ascent hours later, they are met with silence. Their faces are grim, the loss of BOR a fresh wound. But as they crest the ridge of the Great Back, they see the change. They see the newly armed fortress their world has become. They see the wound, finally clean and closed, beginning to scab. They see the Great One, for the first time in a week, reach its long neck down to drink from a high mountain lake without fear. The pact is sealed, not in words, but in the shared scars of the hunters, the calloused hands of the builders, and the slowly mending flesh of the living world beneath their feet. They are no longer just a clan living on a dinosaur. They are the will and mind of the moving mountain. This was more than the survival of a single clan. On the back of a living island, a fundamental shift occurred, an echo of the audacity that would one day define Homo sapiens. It was the moment our ancestors refused to accept their place as scavengers hiding in the shadows of titans. Faced with the raw, overwhelming power of ancient Earth, they did not simply run farther or hide better. They chose to stand, not with brute force, but with a courage born of community and a strategy born of desperation. They looked upon one of the largest creatures to ever walk the planet, a force of nature, and forged a partnership, a living, breathing alliance. This act of defending their colossal host was the seed of civilization itself, the understanding that our greatest strength lies not in the sharpness of our own teeth, but in our ability to protect, to build, and to turn the impossible scale of the world to our advantage. What is true courage, if not the choice to descend from your sanctuary to fight for the very ground that holds you up, proving that even the smallest mind can become the guardian of the greatest strength? For in the deep archives of our instincts, we remember that our ascent began not when we conquered the world, but when we first chose to defend it. But across the great salt water, a different kind of intelligence is rising, one that does not build, but only craves.